Joe Grover, also known as a goal achievement strategist. Everything in my platform is Rise Above with Patricia Joe Grover. We have the Rise Above show, the Rise Above summits, the Rise Above anthology book series, and so excited now, the Rise Above Project, which is a nonprofit under the umbrella of the Institute for the Advancement of Humanity, which is a 501c3 organization. I also have my Bliss Retreat for women, where women can learn to believe in yourself, love yourself, identify what's holding you back, set free what no longer serves you, and set course on achieving your dreams and goals. The next event is Friday, October 29th and Saturday the 30th from 10 to 2. With the Rise Above Summit that we're all here to watch, we have our level 1 sponsor, Roger Burnley, level 2 sponsors, Albert Quarry, Roger Burnley, Dr. Dolores Fazinio, Sheila Farr, and our level 3 sponsors, Shelley Deckant, Dr. Wendy Labatt, Dr. Liz Eisenring, Dan Capellan, Annie Gibbons, Christiana Totor, and Jessica Koch. And our total sponsor. Let's take a minute to hear from them.
You are a leader every day. You may or may not realize it. You don't need a team of direct reports or a company or a country to be considered a leader in the eyes of others. Think of your many interactions every day when you apply influence to get the results you want. Listen to Patty Jo Grover interview me for ideas to get the results you want with leadership greatness you did not know you have.
Welcome to the Rise Above Summit, October of 2021. I have with me in the vocational dimension of life, you may recognize him. This is Dan Capellan. He was the sponsor of the entire vocational dimension of life. Let me tell you a little bit about Dan. And, he is talking to us today about everyday leadership for getting the results you want. During Dan's life and his corporate and entrepreneurial career, he evolved from someone who only knew self-reliance to someone who values and teaches the principles of leadership and influence and gets you the results you want. He observed, studied, and worked for good and bad bosses and made plenty of mistakes himself. Dan wants to raise your awareness about leadership and influences and the qualities within you achieving your desired outcomes. So happy to have you with us here on the Rise Above Summit, Dan.
Thank you, Patty. I'm just thrilled to be here and to also listen to the other speakers on the summit.
And thank you for saying that. Yeah, it is amazing. When on this summit, I really have all 8 dimensions of life because we know that you're not always on an even playing field with everything in your life. Sometimes there's fluxes, and it's great to have speakers such as yourself talking about topics in these dimensions that may help somebody on their journey to goal achievement. It really is true. So Dan, you told me what you experienced was a diverse life in the corporate and entrepreneurial worlds. What have you learned on your journey that has brought you to where you are today?
Well, my corporate and entrepreneurial life were influenced by where I started in my childhood. I was raised on a dairy farm in Wisconsin, and this was a truly mom and pop operation, not one of these big mechanized farms that you see on TV or read about in the paper. It was my first experience with a solopreneur business. We could barely make ends meet, and things were constantly breaking down. The machinery for tilling, planting, and harvesting were constantly being fixed by my dad, and I observed and learned how to fix the machines myself. We took pride in being a jack of all trades and master of none because we had to do it all. Now, we did collaborate with our neighbors to harvest hay and grain. These were muscle types of activities, but 90% of our activities were confined within the immediate family. And me, as the oldest child, meant that was mostly dad and I. And like most farmers, we were self-sufficient, and I grew to prize self-reliance. I didn't really care for farming, and I left it to become the first person in our extended family of cousins to attend college. After receiving my degree in mechanical engineering, I worked as an engineer in the automotive industry for 18 years and the rest of my career in marketing. During this time, I worked on reducing pollution and fuel consumption in cars and trucks. And because of the nature of that work, I had to collaborate with colleagues and technicians as well as report to my managers. I really didn't care for all the collaborative kinds of things. I wanted to just be told what to do and to get it done. I, in fact, found collaboration a bit irritating. Now, I wasn't a rebel or anything like that. I was just used to getting things done on my own and not having to rely on other people. I focused on solving problems, just like I did on the farm with my dad. Now I had moved into a world where the problems were bigger, and self-reliance would not get the job done. And I was often frustrated because of how I reacted to things, at not getting the cooperation I needed to get the results I wanted. And I didn't understand why. There was a way that I knew, and it wasn't working. But it did fuel a desire to learn more. And I pursued an MBA, and in that MBA, I focused on the organizational behavior and marketing courses. These were courses I thought would help me understand people. But I still thought in mechanical terms. Organizations put people in boxes on an org chart. Yeah, okay, I can do that. Marketing, design, promotion, sales channels, and organizational support to sell and deliver products to the customers. Now, I didn't really appreciate that I had to align my goals to get the results that align with these customers, but I was beginning to learn that I applied influence and leadership without realizing it. And my success gradually improved. But if I had understood these things and combined the experiences into a cohesive leadership blueprint, I believe that I could have had a much bigger impact on the world by now than what I have. But the good news is that I'm not done yet. And I can help you and others get the bigger results that you want. I embarked on my entrepreneur journey in 2010, following an early retirement that I took advantage of during the Great Recession. And subsequently, I had the opportunity to reflect on my career and to study leaders like Napoleon Hill, John Maxwell, Brian Tracy, Jack Canfield, and others. And they helped me develop awareness about the important role that influence and leadership plays in getting the results we want.
Oh, so true, and such great references there, Dan, and it really is true. So you progress from a mindset of self reliance and problem solving into believing the importance of the influence in leadership. So, can you tell us more about your view on leadership?
We hear the word leadership tossed around daily, and we hear about people who are described as political leaders, corporate leaders, or even at a higher level, thought leaders. We think of these leaders as being bigger than life, and we see them on TV and we read about them today. We don't think we can attain that. On a smaller scale, we see leaders in our church groups and our neighborhood groups, and we find that often the small group leaders have authoritarian tendencies, and our reaction is that we don't want to be like them. So, in a lot of ways, the idea of leadership seems unattainable, or in other ways, undesirable. And we also think about leadership as perhaps being in charge of a team or a company. And it doesn't have to be that way, because without realizing it, we apply leadership and influence every day. We do it with our children, our spouse, our colleagues, our managers, vendors, joint venture partners. It's not just employees and team direct and team members and direct reports that we lead. It is all those around us, and the objective is to get the results we want. So how then can we think of leadership in a way that paves our path to the results we want and gains followers who want to help us succeed? I find it helpful to think about the small, everyday ways in which we apply leadership principles. The greatest leaders we admire started small, and they grew with experience. They were born the same as us. They suffered setbacks the same as us. We can learn and develop the same as them. So let's begin with a definition for leadership, because definitions provide an anchor or an understanding. And I've seen a lot of definitions of leadership, and I'm not saying any of them are wrong. I think it is a matter of what resonates. And here's one that resonates with me. If you have a pen and paper, you might want to write this down. Leadership is the process of social influence which motivates effort toward achievement of a goal. There's three key terms in there that I want to expand on. The first is social influence. Remember when I talked about the baby crying? Well, that was coercive influence. Social influence involves the process of framing your desired results in a way that aligns with the desired results of your audience, who you're talking to. If somebody wants the same thing as you, influencing them to help is a slam dunk because you're helping them as well. But don't lie or manipulate. Listen carefully to what they desire and be honest with yourself and them. If their desires don't align with yours, it's better to just remain friends and continue on your separate paths. The second key term is motivation. Motivation is the desire or willingness of someone to do something. We hear about motivating people all the time, but to truly motivate someone, you want to appeal to their internal desires. When you are able to do that, they will feel motivated to help you move toward your desired result. The third term is goal. You have to know your desired result. You're going to also have more success by explaining the why of the desired result. If you explain to others why you need something or why you want something, they're much more likely to go along with it because they feel like they truly are helping you instead of just performing a task. My best bosses were those who gave me a clear set of goals that aligned with the company mission. And they asked me what I needed from them to be more effective. We were aligning our desired results, not just among ourselves, but with the company as well. My worst bosses, they were the ones who told me what I should have done after I did the wrong thing, despite thinking I was doing what was asked of me. So let me repeat again. Leadership is the process of social influence, not coercive, and it motivates effort toward achievement of a goal. And we do that by aligning our results with the results of our audience.
Wow, that is such great information, and oh, so wonderful to have people be able to listen to you, Dan, and hopefully everybody's picking up on these things that he's sharing with us. So, Dan, you said that we're born leaders, but not everyone feels that they're a leader. Can you help us by expanding on that so that they can learn from this?
We are born with the innate ability and desire to get the results that we want. Now, this is a broad definition of leadership, depending on the skills that we learn and apply. And we apply it to different degrees. So, yes, I believe that we are born as leaders, but the nature of our leadership changes over time. For example, when we were a baby, we learned that we could get attention if we were hungry or wanted to be fed, or if we had an uncomfortable diaper that we wanted changed. Now, this is somewhat coercive because our caregivers wanted us to be happy, or in some cases, our caregivers were irritated by the noise and wanted us to be quiet. As we grew older, we were expected to verbalize what we wanted. And as we asked for more and more, we were often told no. If we took it upon ourselves to explore, for example, kitchen cabinets or to grab another child's toy, we were told no even more vigorously, and depending on the severity of the offense, may have gotten a slap on the hand or more. So at this age, we begin the process of suppressing our natural leadership tendencies because we don't know how to do it with social influence. We are using demanding, often coercive, and instinctive types of influence. We began to soften this a little bit when we entered school. But in school, we were taught to sit quietly when the teacher spoke, to stand in a straight line for recess, and to not run in the hall. Violating these rules earned a sharp scolding. Again, we were suppressed. Over time, we learned the importance of compliance rather than leadership, because the results we wanted were things such as admiration of our teachers, and we had to behave to get that, or the approval of our parents for getting good grades. We had to listen to our teachers and be quiet in school and study in order to get the good grades for our parents' approval. We progressed even further in high school and college, but the interesting thing there is that it was the athletic students who earned the admiration of their peers as sports stars, or the cheerleaders who performed in front of the crowds. Some in debate clubs and school plays get the opportunity to explore their skills and to gain admiration in other ways. But many of us were perhaps lesser skilled students or lesser skilled players, or some may not have participated in anything at all because we lacked the skills or confidence to perform. And then some people were late bloomers. Some people tried things and failed. All of this tended to, again, suppress our leadership tendencies that are innate within us but get covered up. So we get into our careers and we carry these fears and we lack the confidence. Now, some overcome these self-imposed obstacles and thrive. Many are held back by limiting beliefs. We do not necessarily feel that we possess the skills needed to get the results we want. And when that happens, we settle for what we can get. Now, when we measure up to our increased expectations, our confidence increases. When we don't measure up, our confidence gets knocked down and we regress to those early years. So some of our experiences give us confidence. Some of our experiences suppress our confidence, but the sum of all our experiences, good and bad, got us to where we are today. And the good news is that you can now think about that and determine the path for tomorrow. And we can progress to greatness. Every one of us has practiced leadership and influencing skills, and we often take that for granted. Great leaders don't take that for granted. They create intentional habits that form them into a great leader. And that is what we see on the outside. We too can choose the type of leader that we want to be, and we can choose the size of the impact that we want to make.
Oh, fantastic points, Dan. Fantastic. So there was something that caught me there. So what do you mean by intentional habits? What are some actions that our attendees can apply so that they can understand leadership skills and get the results that they want?
Every leader is different, and they develop their own style based on experience from their formative years and their years of overcoming. And they learn from the leaders who inspire them the habits that got those leaders to where they are. And they intentionally work on them and apply them to their own benefit. From this, they create a blueprint that fits their personality and defines the results that they want and defines their principles of conduct. There are 10 principles that I talk about in an ebook that I will give as a gift to our listeners, but I'm not going to talk about these 10 principles today because it would require considerably more time. But I will share with you 2 behaviors, 2 principles, if you will, that I believe are key to developing influence. When I realized this and adopted them in my behavior, I found it much easier to develop relationships and to get the results that I want. The first, and again, get your pen and paper, is to help people feel good about themselves. How do you do this? You help people feel good about themselves by listening intently. Listen with your eyes. Look into the eyes of the person you are interacting with. They will feel like the most important person in the world. And when you are interacting with them, portray a positive attitude. When you're positive, they feel positive. When they feel positive, they feel good. The second behavior, and write this down as well, is to serve others first. Sure, we have goals, but we're not going to get far if we only talk about what we want and only ask for what we want. Gary Vaynerchuk wrote an interesting book called Jab, 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 Right Hook. And in it, he emphasizes offering value first and ways to do it. He suggests offering value multiple times. That's the jab, 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 before making our ask. that's the right hook. And so it makes it easier because the customer feels like they know you, they like you, they trust you. And this doesn't apply just to customers. This applies to other people in your life, your spouse, your children, your colleagues. So think of the jab, 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 right hook to get the results you want. I might add as a corollary to serve with integrity. And that means to follow through on any promises you make. Don't, don't be making false promises, especially promises that you have no intention of keeping. I've experienced a number of incidents in which salespeople made false promises, and it left in me a sour taste that tainted my view of that company based on the failure to follow through of that particular individual. So, to repeat again, help others feel good and serve others first, and serve them with integrity and authenticity when you offer value. Only make promises for which you will follow through.
Oh, great, great tips again, Dan. Such great information for our attendees. So you said earlier that you had a gift for our attendees. Can you tell us a little bit more about it and how they can get it?
Yeah, thank you. I mentioned it earlier. I didn't talk about the 10 principles in the gift because it's a much longer discussion than we had time for. What I want is for everyone who is watching here to realize the leader within themselves and to apply this skill in their everyday interactions. I hope that the talk today got you motivated to understand how to be more effective at getting the results you want. So the gift is a 41-page ebook, and it's also a workbook to create your own leadership blueprint using the 10 principles that great leaders adopt and use in their everyday leadership. It's there's room for you to write in it, but you don't have to spend hours and hours. It's just bringing your own awareness to yourself. This gift normally costs $197, but it has a priceless value, and its value will be in proportion exponentially to what you put into it. The landing page will also offer the first 20 people the ability to schedule a free 30-minute one-on-one Zoom meeting with me. And during that time, I will answer any questions about the ebook, which is based on everyday leadership principles, or I'll provide feedback on results that you want and possibly help you frame it. So how do you get these? Go to the website. It should be showing on your screen, leadership.kmsprofit.com. Lastly, I want to add that I'm launching a 6-week, 6-module course on November 2nd. It is titled Leadership Impact Formula. It expands on what we talked about today and what's in the free gift for those who want to dig deeper into adopting the 10 principles of great leaders for their own blueprint. And for those who get the ebook, I will offer the course at an even greater discounted price.
Oh, so wonderful. I hope that our attendees got all this information. His website is right here for everyone. Thank you for serving with us, Dan, on the vocational dimension of life. Thank you for being with us. Welcome to the Rise Above Summit, October 2021, and we are in the vocational dimension of life. And I have with me Jay Fairbrother. Let me tell you a little bit about Jay. He's the founder of the Profit Architects. He's a serial entrepreneur and business coach with over 30 years of experience in starting, scaling, buying, and selling businesses. Jay's story includes losing everything in 2010 in the financial crisis and rising from the ashes. His mission over the next decade is to help 100 entrepreneurs to each reach six figures in profits to their businesses. His program, Selling from the Heart with Integrity and Authenticity, will help you convert more prospects already in your pipeline, which goes 100% to the bottom line. Oh, so happy to have you here serving with us on the Rise Above Summit, Jay.
Thanks, Patty. I'm really happy to be here.
You know, and so I want to ask you what your story is and why, because this is going to make a difference in so many people's lives just hearing this.
Yeah. So and I thank you for that introduction. That was lovely. I've had enough businesses that I've had some pretty massive success, and I've had even more massive failures. I did lose everything in the financial crisis, 2008 to 2010. So clearly, I'm a crappy investor and a better entrepreneur. And what's interesting about you asked about my why. What's interesting for me is that after losing everything, and I mean everything, you go into survival mode, and I spent and I was doing consulting back then and that kind of thing, but I kind of just got away from it. I actually spent what I call about 8 years in what I call the cellar of shame. I just sort of disconnected from a lot of the entrepreneurial communities and circles that I had been in, and all my contacts, and just I literally lived in a friend's basement for 5 months. Granted, it was a nice basement, but still. So anyway, fast forward a couple of years ago, so I survived all that. But a couple of years ago, I had something personal happen. I actually got dumped in a personal relationship, and it put me in a very, very bad place. Really dark place. And in that process of sort of saying, what's my why? What do I need to move forward? And it wasn't, this bright light that appeared in the sky or anything. But I just need to get back to hanging out with and helping entrepreneurs. And that was as simple as it was. And that was a few years ago. And so fast forward to today, and that's exactly what I'm doing through the Profit Architects. I'm involved in another entrepreneurial community called Glow, which is fabulous. And so now literally all I do all day long is hang out with and help entrepreneurs. So that's kind of where I came from and where I'm at today.
So just sharing that story and the losses and struggles that you had, there's so many other people out there, Jay, that I'm sure are listening to you can relate. And that's what it's all about, is helping people to be able to move forward. And sometimes it's that encouraging, word or hearing, hey, somebody else has done this, so I can do it too. So yeah. So Jay, let me ask you, why is your company so focused on profits? I know everybody wants to be able to make money, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah. So, it's interesting because some people actually have an issue with profits, and I'll circle back to that in a second. But so for me, it comes from my personal experience, but I also know from hanging out with a lot of entrepreneurs over the years that most entrepreneurs, especially in their first business or two, struggle with the idea of profit because we're sort of taught by all the other mentors and gurus out there to focus on growth, more clients, more leads, more revenue, bigger sales funnels. And that's great, when it's natural to be focused on the growth. Like in my case, my first company, when I hit 50 employees, I thought, my ego was pretty pleased with myself. And when I hit 5 million in sales, I kind of thought I was a big shot. And even at that point, several years into my business, I still really wasn't making any money. I was making low six figures. I hadn't had a vacation in I don't know how long, probably since I started the company. It wasn't the dream experience you envisioned as an entrepreneur, even though my company was very successful and we were growing, right? Grow. So fortunately, I figured it out eventually. And by the time I hit 200 employees, I was very profitable and extremely small from those who start one. But I can tell you, you're never going to sell a business without profit, because no one's going to buy your growth. No one's going to buy your business just for your employees or your expertise or your resources. They're buying it for the profits. And there's very few exceptions to that. But, that's one of the things that you want to look at. So the other thing that I would throw in here is when I start working with a client, I always ask them, we know about asking somebody, what's your why? Right. Thank you, Simon Sinek, for making that a popularized thing. But when I start working with somebody, I say, well, what's your profit why? And they usually look at me funny. And it's like, well, let's say you had $10,000 in additional profits right now today from your business that you didn't expect. You hit the profit lottery. What would you do with it? Right. And it's important for you to understand as you're, running your business and looking in the future, what you would do with additional profit. There's no right answer, right? It doesn't matter if you're going to put it in your pocket, or you're going to take that big fancy vacation finally, or you're just going to reinvest it back in your business, or you're just going to help more people, or you're going to, donate it all and make the world a better place. All of those are great answers. The important thing is that you have thought about it and planned for it and know what you're going to do with it. So know your profit why.
Right. And something again that comes to mind is that exit strategy, and even you can even put it towards that, who knows? And if people don't take that into consideration.
Yeah. I think I was, 5 years into my business, my first business before, and somebody asked me, what's my exit strategy? And I was like, what is an exit strategy? What is that? So.
Right. So let me ask you, Jay, how was it that you began to get involved with coaches and helping them?
Yeah. So I do a lot of sales training, sales coaching with coaches and consultants. And it's actually, in a sense, almost accidental. I didn't set out with that intention, but I've done so much sales training, coaching, developing sales teams over all of my businesses over the years. It's, one of my core strengths. And a few years ago, I hired a LinkedIn lead gen company to get leads for my own coaching business. And I started to work with the president of the company, giving him some sales coaching. Then he had me work with several other of their employees with sales coaching. And at one point, I went to them and said, you're doing great with your service. You get people the 3 to 4 calls a week that you say you're getting them. But if they're not good enough on the other end of those calls, converting them into paying clients, you're just not going to have the ROI, right? They're going to start dropping off because they're not, getting the ROI from your high level service. So we worked out some packages that they started to offer where if you sign up for their service, it includes sales coaching from me. So over the last 18 months or so, I've worked with a ton of coaches individually with sales coaching. And I have to say, it's just been incredibly fulfilling. There's something about coaches and their energy and enthusiasm, and I just have loved doing it. So I developed this program, How to Sell Like a Coach. So that's what we're doing with coaches.
Oh, and that's fantastic. Again, myself, again, some of us, it's we focus so much on serving, and those other things are just not in our lane. The whole building of the funnel and doing this and doing that, that's not our focus. Our focus is helping people. So yeah, and it's good to have a system and know somebody who knows how to set it up for sure. So let me ask you, this kind of rolls into that. Jay, what are the biggest mistakes that people make when in selling in the process?
Yeah, so I'll start with your last comment, because really, one of the issues is they're not focused on selling, right? That we're taught to focus so much on the top of our sales funnel or the middle of it, right? So more leads, how do we get the bigger, fancier sales funnels and that kind of stuff? And no one really pays attention to, oh my God, I had, 5 discovery calls and I converted, 2 or 3 of them into clients. And trust me, if you've converted 3 out of 5 into clients, you're doing very well, right? But what that also means is you're losing 2 out of 5. And nobody looks at that. You've already paid all the money and spent all the time to get them through your funnel to the point that you're in front of them, trying to form that personal relationship to see if there's a fit, right? Because, selling isn't just to see if I'm a fit for you. It's 2 ways, right? That's part of what you're trying to discover in the selling process is if it's a good fit both ways. So, people aren't paying attention to what's leaking out of the bottom of your sales funnel that you might be losing. And this is one of the things I do with people is I'll work those numbers and say, look, what if you converted another 1 out of 5? What if you converted another 1.5 out of 5? And let's look at those numbers extrapolated across the whole year in business and it's amazing what it adds to the bottom line. So that's the first thing is just, realize that no matter how good you might be at selling, that you can always make improvements. And then what I've learned from working with so many coaches is that a lot of them aren't comfortable with selling. It doesn't come natural. They, maybe had some sales, they maybe read some sales books or something, but there's a difference between sales knowledge and sales skill. So you can take a sales course, you can read a sales book, you can have a strategy session with a sales coach. That's sales knowledge. What you really need is some sales skill, right? You need to know how to, without, you're not going to reinvent yourself as a professional salesperson. No one wants that. But how do you, make some small tweaks to what you're doing and have it be at a skill level so it comes naturally so that, you can make those incremental conversion improvements and increase that bottom line. So that's the first thing. And then I'd say the most common mistake people make is typically just talking too much. So that's why I call my program How to Sell Like You Coach, because the last thing you would do in a coaching session is show up and throw up, right? You would never approach a coaching session and talk 70% of the time. And that's what happens especially with a lot of coaches, right? Because you have an expertise and you want, you want to share that expertise. So what happens is you go into what I call professor mode, and you start using all the big words and flowery language to, explain what you do. And often that puts people, if it doesn't put them to sleep, puts them into what I call the Charlie Brown classroom mindset, right? Where it's wah, wah, right? Yeah. So, that's the first thing is just don't talk too much. Make sure you're really exploring what the person's issues are, where their pain points are, and that kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah. And that all is so real. I mean, I can picture these things in my head. So let's go back to something you said before, and really it resonates with me. People need to understand, and maybe you can help us with the importance of understanding ROI.
Yeah, so that's another very common mistake that I find is that people are not spending enough time exploring the ROI of whatever it is that you're helping people with, because anytime someone is not thinking about the ROI, they're thinking of you and your service as an expense, not an investment. And so a very common mistake, even for the coaches who have an initial ROI discussion, say on the first call or whatever, of saying, doing a couple questions around, well, if you add some clients, what does that mean for you or whatever? What I say is you have to have that ROI discussion at every point of contact in your sales process. So if you have a 3-call sales process, every single call, you want to have that ROI discussion. You never want to just assume, oh, well, I had that. We talked about ROI the first time, so surely they remember that. No. What they remember is how much you cost, right? They remember that you're an expense and how am I going to get, be able to do that. So it's important to constantly have that ROI discussion and to make it as concrete and specific as possible. And that, there's some ways to do that so that it doesn't, appear like you're probing too far or getting too personal, but just you've got to, ask them, what are their numbers now? What will their numbers look like? And if you're doing something that's not, if it's not the answer is more clients. I mean, there's a lot of ways our ROI manifests itself, right? And that gets into what does your future look like, if we solve these problems, right? It might not be money. Money isn't always the ROI, but you've got to make sure you're reinforcing whatever that ROI is constantly.
Great points, Jay. Really, truly. And with many coaches, for us, it's not necessarily what it is that they're going to advance in. It could be, an emotional level. It could be, a career. It could be so many different things. So great point with that. So I know that you were talking, and the importance came around of storytelling and how it can affect one's business. And so can you go a little bit more in depth with that?
Yeah. So that's another easy way to be able to sell with more authenticity, and be more comfortable selling. So most people have heard the expression facts tell, stories sell, right? So we kind of intuitively know that stories are a good way to communicate, right? But a lot of people don't kind of know how to tell stories, when to tell stories, and how to use them in the sales process. There's, an example would be that a lot of people, when they tell a story, they don't provide enough details. So they might say, yeah, I had a client once in this industry and they had this problem and I came in, insert big words, flowery language, wah, 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 right? And it doesn't have the impact. Whereas if you can train your brain to know that, oh, this person has this pain point, I tell this story, right? Here's my story that explains, it demonstrates and illustrates how I help somebody in a similar situation with that pain point. And so what I work with people on is to, create a story around all of your differentiators, all your USPs, whatever you call them, around all the pain points that you solve for, and come up with a story that illustrates, demonstrates how you have helped solve the problem. And then the other thing is using visual language. So, when you go into when you start using the big words, flowery language, start rattling off your USPs, right? The other thing that's happening on the other end when you're in explainer or professor mode is the person you're talking to has those little voices in the back of their head that are going like, why are you talking to this person? What are you doing? You can't afford this. What are you even thinking? Right? So those are the background voices in your head. But when you go into a storytelling and you start using visual language, those voices quiet, right? And there's some easy ways to do that. I mean, first just say, well, let me tell you a quick story. That automatically triggers our brain to pay attention and listen, right? And we're just hardwired since the cave age days to do that. So, paint, what you're trying to do is paint pictures for people, for them to imagine a future that's different than what they have now, right? So using visual language, well, what do you think that looks like if we can help solve this issue? How do you see yourself a year from now when this situation has changed? Imagine yourself in this scenario once you've solved all the problems. So using that kind of visual language, it keeps people present, has so much more impact, and it quiets those little voices in the back of their head.
Oh, fantastic. And that makes so much sense, Jay. So can you tell us, I mean, you've shared so much, but do you have any free gifts for our summit attendees?
I do. In fact, it's around storytelling. It's called the Story Challenge, and it basically walks you through exactly what I was just talking about, where it gives you some background information and kind of educates you a little bit more than what we just did here. It asks you to, come up with your lists of your USPs and the pain points you saw for, and then to create stories around them. And it gives you a template and framework to do that. And then the hard part, of course, is training your brain, right? It's because just coming up with the stories, that's knowledge, that's not skill. So it is an exercise, hopefully, that you translate it into more skill so that you don't even have to think about which stories you're telling when and how to use them.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for that for our attendees. So wonderful. And so how can they get these?
So if you go to my website, theprofitarchitects.com /story-challenge. So /story-challenge. And we'll make sure that the link gets put in the comments as well.
Wonderful. And thank you again, Jay, for being with me in the vocational dimension of life. And have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks.
Welcome to the Rise Above Summit, October of 2021. I'm your host, Patricia Jo Grover, also known as a goal achievement strategist. Everything in my platform is Rise Above with Patricia Jo Grover. We have the Rise Above show, the Rise Above summits, the Rise Above anthology book series, and so excited now, the Rise Above project, which is a nonprofit under the umbrella of the Institute for the Advancement of Humanity, which is a 501c3 organization. I also have my Bliss Retreat for women, where women can learn to believe in yourself, love yourself, identify what's holding you back, set free what no longer serves you, and set course on achieving your dreams and goals. The next event is Friday, October 29th and Saturday the 30th from 10 to 2. With the Rise Above Summit that we're all here to watch, we have our level 1 sponsor, Roger Burnley, level 2 sponsors, Albert Quarry, Roger Burnley, Dr. Dolores Fazinio, Sheila Farr. And our level 3 sponsors, Shelley Deckant, Dr. Wendy Labatt, Dr. Liz Eisenring, Dan Capellan, Annie Gibbons, Christiana Totor, and Jessica Koch. And our total sponsor. Let's take a minute to hear from them.